Hi, I'm Dr. Richard Bolzachelli, lecturer in theology for Catholic Studies Academy. As I record this video, we find ourselves in the midst of a global campaign of social distancing intended to slow the spread of the COVID-19 virus. In this time, we find ourselves facing scarcities of products that we're used to being able to obtain rather easily, products like toilet paper. And when we do find these products, we often find that they're offered to us at rather exorbitant prices. Now, if you were to ask a classical liberal economic theorist whether this is just or unjust, he would basically say, well, that question is kind of nonsensical. I mean, depends what you mean by just and unjust. But from an economic point of view, the price of a product, the correct price of a product, is whatever the market will bear. If the buyer is willing to pay the price commanded by the seller, then that's the price of the product. There's no fault in the seller obtaining for a product that he brings to market whatever it is that people are willing to pay for it. I mean, what's wrong, after all, with minimizing our costs and maximizing our profit? That's how people get rich, and that's kind of the goal, right? But from a classical Catholic point of view, that answer simply will not hold. It's true at a certain level, right? I mean, as a description, yes. The price of the product, by default, is what it sells for. But the seller isn't forced by by natural powers, right? Like gravity to sell the product for as much as he possibly can get for it. It's true under conditions like those we're facing now that we can expect prices to go up, at least temporarily and marginally, depending upon how difficult it is to get them. A crop failure for certain kinds of goods will understandably make it harder and more costly to obtain those products and bring them to market, and therefore we can expect the prices to be higher, sometimes considerably higher for certain goods. Or under extraordinary conditions like those we're facing now, where we have a strange combination of panic buying and hoarding on the one hand, which I don't wish to criticize at this moment, but let's just recognize it as a contributing factor, leading to scarcity of goods, and also difficulties in doing business, precautions that distributors and retailers and manufacturers are all through the supply chain forced to take, right? I mean, these are doing business is different today than it was 2 or 3 months ago in many respects. And so there are costs assumed along the way, right, as the product comes to market. They will drive up the cost of that product for the seller. And the seller's overhead also increases. So we could see how the price would go up, and it would go up justly. Because when you have two just persons doing business with one another, each person seeks to do something just for the other, while justice is being done to him. We want a kind of fair trade between the seller and the buyer. In a very good article published in Business Ethics Quarterly in 2012, Darrell Cohen and Barry Wilbrot, in their article, A Defense of a Thomistic Concept of the Just Price, described Thomas's view, actually, right, as identifying not a just price in sort of this abstract kind of way where a central government might determine what something should sell for and how much people should be willing to pay, but instead what they called a just person price. The price that two just persons would negotiate with one another, recognizing that one person has an interest in providing for himself and his family, for his needs today and tomorrow, given his station in life, while the other person is himself engaged in the process of so providing for his family, spending money so that he can acquire the goods that he needs to provide. These two people share a kind of common interest with one another. They're both human beings. They're both in a very real way engaged in a common enterprise, each with respect to his own family, but as co-citizens in the world, right? As members of a common human family. And so they care for one another. It's a just thing for each to negotiate a price that gets both parties what it is that they really need. Price gouging is another thing. This is where, and we see this to some extent today, where people will take advantage of a sudden desperation in the buyer and they'll exploit it. So let's say that somewhere along the way a retailer managed to acquire toilet paper at a price where he expected to sell it for $1 a roll, just hypothetically. And now he finds himself in a situation where he could sell that same roll of toilet paper, which he purchased, remember, at the earlier price, but for 10 times the amount. Would he be justified in charging that amount? From a Catholic point of view, the answer to that question is no, even if from a classical liberal point of view, the answer would be yes. I think that for the most part, the classical liberal articulation that the price of a product is whatever the market will bear may be serviceable under normal economic conditions. But as a Catholic thinker on this point, I have to say they are not serviceable, right? That is not a serviceable definition under extraordinary economic conditions.